Thanks everyone for being here today. Thanks for the Greater Tygerberg Partnership for inviting me to speak. And I'm very excited to be here. So my name is Alice Cabaret. I think Lauren presented me quite well, so I'm an urban strategist. And today I think we're going to talk about how urban innovation can contribute to neighborhood regeneration. So how urban innovation is used to create more dynamic spaces. And how you actually include the wider communities in terms of creating new spaces. So to talk about that and in 20 minutes, which is quite a challenge, we're going to just talk about very concrete examples of urban regeneration, urban innovation, inclusive urban regeneration. And the first example we're going to take is the Maboneng Precinct in Johannesburg. I'm not sure if some of you have been there already before. Yes, some of you, that's great. Yes, good. Where I worked as an urban strategist for 3 years. So we're going to start by that. It's a good example of urban regeneration in a South African context, in a South African city, Johannesburg. Second example is going to be about the Grind Cities Initiative. Grind stands for the Global Regeneration Initiative for Neighborhood Development. And it's a non-profit initiative that encourages alternative and inclusive urban regeneration projects. It's on a volunteer basis, and I'm going to present some of the projects we've done with Grind Cities. And the third point is going to be really about the Street Society, which is my new company, which also deals with urban regeneration and more creative urban regeneration, both for the private and the public sector. And I'm going to present you my latest project. So let's go. First, let's start with the Maboneng Precinct. This is a map of the Maboneng Precinct. It's on the east side of Johannesburg, in an area called City and Suburban, close to GP's Town. And this area was a very active industrial area, up to the 80s, 90s, where a lot of buildings became vacant. So in 2009, Propertuity, a property development company, and the CEO is Jonathan Limman, decided to buy one amazing, beautiful 1910 building called Arts on Main, or that they recalled Arts on Main, which soon became a huge hub for creative industries and art galleries, and also a wiki market. And the wiki market brought more than 2,000 people every Sunday in this area. And that was really the beginning of the development of the wider Maboneng Precinct. And Maboneng is a Sotho word that means place of light. Now the Maboneng Precinct is more than 40 buildings. And Propertuity, the development company, also owns buildings in the Johannesburg CBD and in Durban, and some in Pretoria. So really there were 5 key steps that I think applied in terms of regeneration of the Maboneng Precinct. The first one is, how do you actually create a place where the arts, culture, and creativity can thrive? How do you attract artists? How do you create artist studios? And one, I think, main let's say, stakeholder in the Maboneng Precinct regeneration, I think, was the fact that William Kentridge, one of the most renowned South African artists, decided to move his studio there, which created really an attraction for other artists to also join the precinct. And amazing industrial spaces, high ceiling, which were quite appreciated by the creative industry. Secondly, how to create iconic buildings. So how are you going to keep the industrial character of some of the buildings, but still bring new life to these vacant buildings? How do you going to create different users? And by different users, I mean retail on the ground floor, residential, hotel, sometimes even offices. So how do you actually introduce use diversity within a building and at the neighborhood scale? Third, dynamic local economy. A very important point. So are you actually going to work on programs or projects to include the wider economy, to make sure the development benefits the wider economy of the precinct? How to attract young entrepreneurs? How are you going to make programs to give cheaper spaces also to young entrepreneurs, co-working spaces also? Fourth, activated public spaces. So not only developing the buildings, but also thinking about the links between the buildings. And that's really a big challenge, but also something that makes a whole difference if you achieve it correctly. Thinking about public spaces, thinking about landscaping, urban furniture, place making, how to give a certain identity to this neighborhood. And all of that results into creation of a lifestyle, giving identity and creating a certain sense of place for the area. So in images, basically that's I think the heart, or one of the hearts of the Maboneng precinct. There's a corner of Fox Street and Kruger Street. And in this image, you can actually see clearly the different uses. On the left side, you have a building called Main Street Life. It's 200 residential units from 30 square meters to 200 square meters. So by having so many different ranges of units, you actually make sure you have different income groups living in the same building. So that's also like linked to the mixed income philosophy of the rejuvenation of this previously vacant industrial building. On the ground floor, and you can see that in the whole 3 buildings, you have retail spaces, an independent cinema, a coffee shop, and some amazing fashion shops, restaurants, etc. The middle building is a live and work space. So you'd have architect studios, etc. And on the top, a penthouse that has been valued at 4.5 million rands. So you can really see the diversity from a 30 square meter unit available at 4,000 rands a month to a penthouse that people can buy for 4 million rands, you know. On the right side, you have a building called the Main Change. It's an office building with co-working spaces, smaller offices to bigger office spaces, and on the top you also have a rooftop bar. So this is exactly what I mean by diversity of users, diversity of users too. So users and users, from retail to residential to low income groups, high income groups. That's an example of a transformation of one building. That's Revolution House. So that was a vacant industrial building. And as you can see, the difference is quite remarkable. And on the ground floor, and that's really part, I think, of the development and how you approach neighborhoods and how you try to make them more lively. It's how you're going to create life on the ground floor. So before, the ground floor was completely locked up. There was no shops, there was nothing. It was a dead facade, as we call it. And now by creating some shops, you actually create an interaction between the private building and the public realm. That's other examples. That's our students' residence, the Maboneng students' residence called Remed's View. It was done in collaboration with the artist called Remed. So there's actually been a lot of creative collaborations with artists in terms of street art, but also directly in the design of some of the buildings, which make the buildings also more attractive. Also a lot of events in the area, so that's the weekly markets. We also have, like, there's also a night market every first Thursday of the month. And the last picture is really about co-working spaces, spaces for people to work. So really trying to also have the trilogy work, play, and live. So that's really, I think, Maboneng Precinct, the main example of urban regeneration within a South African context, within a post, let's say, industrial area, and the reconversion of different buildings. And some people, I think, made the parallel or draw a parallel between Maboneng Precinct and some other regenerated neighborhoods in the world. Maybe you've heard of Williamsburg in New York, or Shoreditch in London. And up to a certain extent, there's some similarities between these neighborhoods, but there's also obviously very different contexts, economic contexts, etc. So, and that's also part of the thinking about urban regeneration. Some people would say urban regeneration presents risks, and it's been shown in other neighborhoods, especially in America or in Europe, where it can lead to displacement. So that's one of the risks, basically, of urban regeneration, especially if you evict people, which was not part of the perpetuity philosophy for the Maboneng Precinct development, or the increased rentals drive people out of the area. So that's a risk. But there's also opportunities in urban regeneration, for example, infrastructure upgrade, diversification of the social and demographic profile, or better opportunity for job creation, employment. So that's also very positive things to take into account in terms of urban regeneration. And the real question is how to limit the risk, but also how to increase the opportunities of urban regeneration. And that's really the question we explored when creating GRIND, which is the Global Regeneration Initiative for Neighborhood Development. It's a non-profit initiative that works on a model where volunteers, students or young professionals from around the world, but also local, come into a space to implement their own ideas, their own projects about urban regeneration, always with a big focus on community interaction. How do you create a new dialogue with the existing and the new communities in an area, and how you're going to actually test your own ideas to see if it works in a context of urban regeneration. That's basically how the studio works. So now the model of GRIND is to operate on a 3-week period in previously vacant space. So the aim is also to occupy these spaces that otherwise would be dead. And that's the example of the studio in Maboneng on the 5th floor of an industrial empty building. When I arrived there, actually I had my desk here in like a 600 square meter space. It was quite weird. And then you get people sending their proposals about their own ideas for urban projects. And you can also, as GRIND, bring the ideas and get people to implement them. So that's how it looks like, very recycled furniture that we found in the building or in the street, repainted, recuperated. Also a big space for events and talks. I'm going to talk to you about that now. And it's very short the time I have to speak, so I'll try to go very quickly through the project. If you want to learn more, there's actually a brochure with all the GRIND projects. So some of the projects, for example, included collaborative planning session. Maybe you've heard about this process. It's about asking the community what they would like to see in the neighborhood. And it can seem like a pretty simple question, but actually a lot of time plans are made without even asking the community. And the community often have an amazing idea about what they would like to see. So we've done that with adults, we've done that with kids, very interesting. And we took a lot of the ideas, transferred them to perpetuity, and the developers integrated them into the master plan for 2020. Local economic development, and that's one of the examples. It's a company called the Urban Basket that's been created by 2 GRIND residents. And the idea was to source in the Joburg fresh produce market, which was like 10 minutes away from the studio, and into an urban farm, actually created by the city of Johannesburg, and to put together these small baskets that they would deliver door to door. To create employment, they hired a lot of people to like sort out the vegetables, and even the Johannesburg Development Agency was one of their clients. So a great example of local economic development. This is a student from Stanford University. He had this idea of a mobile museum space, where people, it's actually, you can open the space and have your own exhibition, because there was a lot of artists in the area, or aspiring artists that would have loved a space to exhibit. So basically it's a very cheap, affordable space for people to put their own exhibition. There was also a chalkboard for people to write the job adverts. So it's a very, very cool project. Smart cities and technology, it's I think a growing sector when you look at urban spaces, and this project was actually implemented in Cape Town, half in Cape Town, and she also did a session in Johannesburg, and it's testing USB solar powered chargers. And actually, you won't believe it, but these kids, like from 7-year-olds, could read an instruction manual and build their own like solar-powered chargers. Even like 18 years old, sometimes was struggling a bit. So she also took the opportunity to test her own product. She's from the MIT in Boston, with the local community to see if it was working. And that was very beneficial to the areas. Environmental awareness, a whole series of events about how to cook with peels, how to reuse your potato peels, etc., orange even peels, and make them into delicious dishes. And I tested some of them, so I know it's good. But also a community soup with the rest, so and clothes, and a sub-session where people can exchange old pieces of clothing or books. And that really created very meaningful conversations at a neighborhood level, and really made people more aware of their waste and how to reuse the waste. Research and mapping, a whole project by this Belgian student about walking in the city, which I think is such an amazing project and an idea and complex question. And she basically stood in the street and walked with random people and mapped then her walks and her discussions with random people to reflect on what is walking in our cities and how it could be a tool for social engagement. Pop-up sport activities, that was a project by two South African guys, how to reuse unused spaces to do weekly sport activities with the youth. Instead of them, like not having anything to do, so they organized sport competitions, soccer matches, and that was an amazing success. Micro-urban farms, how to create some like mini farms on the rooftop. It's quite tricky also in Johannesburg because you need to have the timing correct and the plants not to die. So we're like still in the process of trying to find sustainable solutions, but it's been quite amazing. That was applying the concept of micro-farming and landscaping to a bad building, or as they called by the municipality, bad buildings, and to work with children in the area to plant lettuce and flowers on the facade of the building. So an amazing project too. Heritage protection, we applied for heritage status, not really, it's actually more blue plaques. So having these plaques in front of heritage buildings in an area, and then created a map, an organized tool, so it's all about heritage consciousness or awareness and how to protect these buildings. Then a series of workshops with different universities, from Stanford University to University of Johannesburg, Wits University, Sciences Po in Paris, about different projects, even prototyping type of sessions, very interesting. And at last, talks and public presentations. We started a series called City Africa, which is about urban development in African cities, and how you actually give free talks, get people in the neighborhood to come to reflect on some issues, to give their opinion. So we use the space also for that, also for showing some documentaries about the city. Quite interesting. So that's for, very quickly, for grind cities. If you, a developer or a representative of residents association or part of the municipality, and you know about unused spaces or areas that would benefit from a volunteering program for 3 weeks with students, then you can email this address or phone this number. And if you're a student or a young professional and you have an idea of a project you'd like to do, then you can email this address or phone this number. All of that leads us to the third and last point, which is more about the latest projects from my company, the Street Society. And I think the grind example and Maboneng Precinct showed that there's clearly a new trend that I think we can call neo-regeneration. It's an inclusive, innovative, and collaborative process of renewing buildings and neighborhoods based on architectural, socio-economic, and environmental interventions. So basically, a more socially conscious way of rejuvenating neighborhoods based on community participation, etc. And I mean, there's a few programs or approaches that link with this idea of urban regeneration. And maybe you've heard of some of them. That could be collaborative planning, how you get people to map their neighborhood and give their ideas. Tactical urbanism, which is testing ideas on a temporary way, and try to see if it works in a space. Place making, how you're gonna do some changes in the neighborhood to bring a certain identity to this neighborhood, work on the identity. And the bottom-up approach, which is also asking the community about their feedback for development. And that's all what we're very interested in the Street Society, which is this company involved in urban regeneration and creative urban regeneration. I'm just going to present you my latest project with the Street Society. It's called People Square. It's the square just in front of the municipality of Johannesburg, the metro building. This is where the mayor's office is. And this is this huge square which is currently not activated. So very dead space. And the idea is to bring life to the space, do a pop-up intervention. And for that, we actually talked to the people that were passing through the square every day and asked them what they would like to see in the square. So obviously, we asked all of these people what they would think and their ideas about the square. And their ideas were mapped into a project plan which now includes food stands and tables, collaborative planning, some urban furniture, landscaping, some activities in a viewing deck. And that's going to happen this year in front of the Council Square. It's also going to become a place where people can display their own innovations for Johannesburg. So it's a very exciting project, and you'll come and hear what people had to say. So thank you. That was like this 20 minutes quick presentation about that. I'd love to hear also your experience and maybe the challenges you faced in terms of regenerating your own neighborhood, or if you had some ideas. What we've done is that at the back of the room, we put a big map of the area with a legend. And you can indicate the places that you think are challenging or problematic, but also the places that you think have a lot of potential. And we'll see the different results and maybe find solutions about what can be done in the area. So I'm looking forward to engaging with you. And if you have any questions, I think now is the right time. Thank you.